Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. It's the last day of my 2 weeks off. This is crazy. It's Sunday, and I think possibly the weather knows it's my last day because for 2 weeks, the whole 2 weeks I've been off, we've had no rain whatsoever. It's been cloudy and it's been cool because, we're in October, but no rain. It's absolutely chucking it down. And even though it's 8 o'clock in the morning and the sun is up, it is so dark and cloudy. I had to put my lamp and all my lights on just to be able to for you to see my face this morning. So yeah, it's a gloomy day today, but oh well. So what have I been up to? As I said, it's been in my second week off from work, so I've been going walking. I've spent time with my mum, and I had a pretty big breakthrough in my anxiety on Tuesday, which I'm still smiling about. I'm still so proud of myself. I went to the Cheltenham Literature Festival with my mum. We got on a bus there and got on a bus back, and the one there was quite busy. I looked around the festival. I went to the shop tent, spent some time there. Then went did a bit of Christmas shopping. So I went all around the shop, and then I went into a restaurant and I sat inside a restaurant, and not once throughout the whole day did I feel anxious. And I've been actively looking at like cinema and theatre and stuff like that, so I feel like I'm coming back to myself. So I am so proud of what I did on Tuesday. It was wonderful. We didn't get to go into an event on Tuesday because unfortunately we've got this bus shortage going on at the moment in England, and a bus strike is actually happening on Monday, well tomorrow should I say, in the region where I live. So because of the bus shortages, by the time we managed to get to town, the event I would have liked to have gone was halfway through, so couldn't go in, and there were no other events on around the time that we were in town that me and my mum wanted to go to. So I haven't actually sat in an event, but literally the thought of stepping into Montpellier Gardens, where the festival is held, 6 months ago would have given me a panic attack. Just the thought of people there would have given me a panic attack. And I walked into there. I was perfectly fine. It was a big deal for me, and so I'm really proud of myself of what I achieved this week. And also my pre-orders have arrived, which I mentioned in my last video, which I didn't have to hold up to say this is what I'm going to be reading, so I thought I'd show you them. So the first one is The Christmas Pig by Jk Rowling. This was released on the 12th of October because it arrived that day I was at the Literature Festival. I got home and probably about, I don't know, 20 minutes later, this arrived. So perfect timing. I absolutely love the hardcover. Look at that, isn't it gorgeous? But yeah, in a few books' time, I'll be reading The Christmas Pig by Jk Rowling. And the other one is The Shape of Darkness by Laura Purcell. Now, Amazon had this listed as the release of the 20th. It said I would get it by the 20th. It turned up on the 14th. It turned out that they got the date, and they must have got the date wrong on the website and such. So you can now get it, and it arrived on the 14th on release day. I have to say, because of the other covers of her other books, I don't like this. I would have preferred the hardback, which was all red with a silhouette of a woman in black and then had scissors, gold scissors, and on the background on the red. I think it would have been so much stronger. But we'll just have to see how the book goes. I'm sure it's going to be brilliant, and I'm sure possibly this cover really relates to the story, but I don't know how. But there we go. So I now have those two at hand for when I come to read them. So yeah, so that's been my time off. I've really enjoyed these 2 weeks off, and having that breakthrough in my anxiety. I've really worked on my mental health, and done various things, walking and having spending time with my mum, which has been lovely. And yeah, it's all been good. I'm really annoyed that my glasses at the moment is just right reflecting either out the window or because of all the lights on and everything and my screen. So sorry if you just can't see my eyes at the moment. I have got this brand new table and I'm experimenting with the height of it because it's got multiple heights and this is the lowest one. So maybe next time I'll do the medium height and such. But anyway, I'm here to talk about the book I've been reading, which is Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. I started this yesterday. I read it in one sitting, in one day. It's been a long time since I've done that on a book of this size. Obviously, if it was like a really thin book, then you can imagine, oh, okay, one sitting, one day, that's fine. I did it with this one. So, what's this book about? This book is about Eleanor and Park, two individuals in 1986 who meet as Eleanor is the new girl in school and she gets on the school bus and people aren't allowing her to sit next to them. She's described as being quite voluptuous. Her clothes are very unique. It's kind of like patchwork, mismatched stuff. She stands out even though she doesn't want to stand out. And she ends up sitting next to Park. And Park is a guy who wants to be invisible. And so he's always got these big headphones on, he's listening to music really loud, he's trying to shut out the world. He's half Korean and he's raised in a family where his dad is very much like into sports and he's like being a man's man sort of thing, and all of his brothers are a lot taller and more muscular than he is, so he's this shorter, thinner guy. So he stands out in his family when he doesn't want to, and he just wants to be completely left alone. And Eleanor stands out when she really doesn't want to stand out either. I don't want to say too much about Eleanor's life because it is a key component to this book. So I don't want to possibly spoil, so that's why I'm not saying any more about her. But they meet on the school bus and sit together, and it's this slow burning friendship which then turns to love, and it tells their story. So as I said, I only started this yesterday and I actually finished it yesterday because I've been busy doing other stuff, and I was like, well, if it's a case of I don't finish it this weekend, I don't finish it this weekend. It's not the end of the world if you guys have to wait a few days extra in order to get my review. So I was like, we'll see how it goes. And then I started reading it and I was like, where did this come from? Because Rainbow Rowell, I know her from one of her other books, Fangirl. I've not read any of her other books, and Fangirl, compared to this, the way that I described it to my sister and our friend Sarah, and I asked, does this make sense? And they said, yes, totally. Is that if you look at Fangirl, it's like a Hollywood rom-com. The glitzy kind of, all the money's been thrown at is, it's very formulaic in a way, even though there are things that come up which I didn't necessarily see coming. It goes to a certain formula, whereas Eleanor and Park is like the gritty, raw, independent film which didn't get much of a budget, as it were, but oh my god, it's fucking amazing. It's like, I'm sorry, is this the same author? Is it? I couldn't believe it. I really, really loved and respected her so much for writing this book in regards to that it is so realistic. Not that her other books are being like completely fanciful and everything, but again, it's the Hollywood rom-com coincidental thing versus the reality of meeting someone on a bus who you're going to see like every day, and like the first day you might smile at each other but you don't really talk, and then you might pass a comment a few dates later about something, and then you start get chat, and that slow burn and where that leads to, so realistic. So I love that Rainbow did that. I will mention that this book caused a bit of controversy when it came out. You can read all about it on Wikipedia if you want to. But basically, it was a couple of things. Firstly, because of the amount of cursing in it, and I think for a school board meeting in America, I think it was like 350 or something like that, between 300 and 400 curses being in this book, because the school, a group of parents said this should not be in the library because there's so much cursing and everything. So it got caught up in that controversy. And then there was another one because of Rainbow being a woman writing from a part of this book, because it goes back and forth between the points of view of Eleanor and Park, or third person of between Eleanor and Park. Because she was writing a book where one of the key characters was a Korean teenage, half Korean teenage boy, that it wasn't right for her to do that, that she didn't know and understand certain things about Korean culture and such. And being half Korean is discussed in this book. And such, and Park talks about how he feels about his heritage and culture and how people perceive it, and yeah, because at one point Eleanor asked him exactly which country he's from, because she's not sure, because she debates, is he from the Philippines and such, which part of Asia exactly is he from, in her own internal monologue, as it were. And then she asked the question, and he explains various things about his culture and everything. The key things that his mother is Korean and his father is American, and he's been raised in America. So he very much has this with his dad, because his dad is really into sports, about Americans game and sport and being a manly man, that kind of thing. And I think that's what caused the controversy about the balance of the Korean culture and such. And in a way, you could argue in a way how his Korean culture is kind of forced down, as it were, and the American is the dominant, but his dad is the dominant one in the family, because his dad being, like I said, American football and man's man, and that's it's the way that his dad is. For me, I didn't feel it as being controversial at all. But that's me personally. Obviously, somebody who is Korean who may read this may feel otherwise, which is totally within their right to feel otherwise. And anybody else reading from any other culture, country, etc., ethnicity, etc., can have their opinion on it too. But for me personally, I didn't feel it was an issue. So yeah, so I started reading this, and it is kind of jarring at first. You have the initial chapter be their very first encounter on the bus, and then you learn a bit backstory, and then you kind of have the encounter again, because the first is from, I think, Park's point of view, and then the second's from Eleanor's. Yes, that's right, because you got Eleanor's day, starts with Park's day and then Eleanor's day. And yeah, every chapter kind of flips back and forth between Eleanor and Park. Sometimes you just have the one instance of their back and between them of a day per chapter. Sometimes it's several. Sometimes literally it's a sentence is Eleanor, then the next sentence is Park, center Eleanor, sentence is Park. It does, but as the book goes along, it becomes that more erratic kind of flipping back and forth. So yes, so it's kind of, it's got a very, very interesting flow to it, certainly. It didn't what's the word, I'm trying to find the word, it didn't annoy, and it didn't I can't find that word, it's really annoying. It didn't unbalance me. That's what I was trying to say. It didn't unbalance me with, because you know, some structures I'm totally fine with, and other ones I go, oh, this is a bit weird. I just found it. I found it very interesting flipping back and forth between these two teenagers. I I found the other characters, or all the characters, very, very believable, especially the teen characters. I found them quite interesting, and the stories that they get caught up with as well, which then intertwine with Eleanor and Park's storylines, or their main storyline, should I say. I liked the flow of it. I think it's one of these. I have a feeling the majority of people really love this book, but there are a load of people that really can't stand it because they don't get the relationship of Eleanor and Park. Like, and I think it's that thing that you think, teen young adult fiction book about two teens and then falling in love is going to be like The Fault in Our Stars, and you know, all of these other books which have been turned into Hollywood films, you know, have that kind of glow about them when you see them on the bookshelves. But Eleanor and Park it's got this, as I said, this rugged, gritty sense of reality that it stands out separately. And I think that's why people might not get the relationship between Eleanor and Park, but I get it. I love the fact that it captures that time in teenage life when music means everything. Things like books or comics or whatever, you know, kids are into, teenagers are into, that's the really important thing to them. And for Eleanor and Park, it's music and comics and classic literature. So to have all those three kind of intertwine and know about these copies of these pieces of culture that they have, where they came from, and them swapping over and letting each other read that, it was just beautiful to read, absolutely beautiful. I really, really loved it. It was just and the fact that I just sat and I was like, I didn't realize how much time had passed. I didn't realize how many pages had passed. And then until I got about, I don't know, 50 pages from the end, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to finish this book today. I am going to finish it. And I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel the weight of what I've, you know, it was comfortable. It was sad. It was brutal at times. But what I love was that Rainbow was so honest and true to the characters. The ending, oh God, the ending near killed me. Her final sentence, I am not surprised that there's a bit afterwards, an author's note to say about the reaction to the final sentence that she's had. And I love the reply to it. I'm not going to say what it is because obviously no spoilers or anything, but if you do read this book, read the author's note after the book is after the story is ended, read that author's note to understand that final line and what Rainbow writes. I agree, I totally and utterly agree with her that it's private, that we shouldn't have any knowledge of what that thing was. And I'm so glad that she chose to do that. So glad. I loved it. I loved it. I'm going to read a little bit to you of this. I chose a page. Which one was this? Yes, this is chapter 12. So this is where they've been on the bus a few times. I'm just going to read Park's bit, which is only 2 pages. So they've been on the bus a few times, and there's been a bit of interest in various things that they like, a bit of discussion, and this is Park getting on the bus at chapter 12. So, When Park got on the bus, he set the comics and Smith tape on the seat next to him so they'd just be waiting for her, so he wouldn't have to say anything. When she got on the bus a few minutes later, Park could tell that something was wrong. She got on like she was lost and ended up there. She was wearing the same thing she'd worn yesterday, which wasn't that weird, but she was also wearing a different version of the same thing, but today was different. Her neck and wrists were bare, her hair was a mess, and a pile, an all-over glob of red curls. She stopped at her seat and looked down at the pile of stuff he'd left for her. Where were her school books, he wondered. Then she picked everything up, carefully as ever, and sat down. Park wanted to look at her face, but he couldn't. He stared at her wrist instead. She picked up the cassette. He'd written, "How soon is now and more," on a thin white sticker. She held it out to him. "Thank you," she said. Now that was something he'd never heard her say before. "But I can't." He didn't take it. "It's for you, take it," he whispered. He looked up from her hands to her dropped chin. "No," she said. "I mean, thank you, but I can't." She tried to give him the tape, but he didn't take it. Why did she have to make every little thing so hard? "I don't want it," he said. She clenched her teeth and glared. She really must hate him. "No," she said, practically loud enough for other people to hear. "I mean, I can't. I don't have any way to listen to it. God, just take it back." He took it. She covered her face. The kid in the seat across from them, a twerpy senior who was actually named Junior, was watching. Park frowned at Junior until he turned away. Then Park turned back to the girl. He took his Walkman out of the pocket of his trench coat and popped out his Dead Kennedys tape. He slid the new tape in, pressed play, then carefully put the headphones over her hair. He was so careful he didn't even touch her. He could hear the swampy guitar start and then the first line of the song, "I am the sun and the air." She lifted her head a little but didn't look at him. She didn't move his hands away from her face. When they got to school, she took the headphones off and gave them back to him. They got off the bus together and stayed together, which was weird. Usually they broke away from each other as soon as they hit the sidewalk. That's what seemed weird now, Park thought. They walked the same way every day. Her locker was just down the hall from his. How had they managed to go their separate ways every morning? Park stopped for a minute when they got to her locker. He didn't step close to her, but he stopped. She stopped too. "Well," he said, looking down the hall, "now you've heard the Smiths." And Eleanor, laughed. So do you see what I mean about the realism of the situation? I love the fact that it's set in 1986 because it takes out modern technology. It takes out all that crap and to look so realistic stuff. I love the fact that letters get involved in this story. And yeah, there's no internet, there's no phones, as where they're available for anyone can buy. I love the thought of them sharing a Walkman and headphones. It is so wonderful. And the fact how awkward that thing was that, she says she can't, and he put the headphones on her and they walked in silence to the locker, and then he's like, "Well, bye then," and just not, it's so cute and it's so realistically awkward. I loved it. I loved Eleanor and Park. I thought it was a wonderful book. And I really like that John Green's quote on the cover. It says, "Reminded me just what it was like to be young and in love with a girl, but also what it's like to be young and in love with a book." And I think that's true. The way that she captures young love, and I do love the fact that on the inside covers, you've got these are reviews and they're written on cassette tapes. It's just brilliant. And another thing, because as I said, there's letters involved to talk about Eleanor and Park and their characters. They're written on like letters and envelopes, and I can't stop smiling about this book. Like I said, this is this is the gritty reality of teenage love compared to the Hollywood rom-com esque, like the independent film to the Hollywood rom-com. It's just wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I would definitely read this again. I loved it. So those are my thoughts on Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. So my usual questions. Would I read this again? Yes, I certainly would. This is staying on my bookshelf. I need to reread this again. Yes, definitely. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, I certainly would. I would let them know, obviously, that it's got some things in here which could be triggering. It's stuff, just FYI, I don't want to say what it is, but in this book, it is stuff that's implied, but it's never specifically said or witnessed. But there could be some triggering stuff in there, so I would mention that. But Rainbow writes it very well, just so that you're aware. Would I read any more of Rainbow's books? Definitely. I've got one of her other books, as I said, Fangirl, which I liked, but this one takes precedent over Fangirl for sure, and I definitely need to look into more of Rainbow's writing. So there we go. So those are my thoughts on Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comment box below, or give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which is Matilda, Empress, Queen, Warrior by Catherine Hanley, of one of the greatest Norman women. I love Matilda, and I've never been able to find a biography about her, and now I have. So I'm very excited for this. As I said, I'm back at work tomorrow, so depending on how I'm feeling, because I'm sure I'm going to be absolutely drained and such, we'll see how long it takes me to get through this book. So hopefully I'll be back next weekend with the review of this. If not, it'll be like whenever after. We'll just have to see, when you're back at work after 2 weeks off, it's draining. So yeah. So there we go, guys. I guess I will see you later. Bye.